And Josh was like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. I'm like, you don't realize this, but you are my favorite human being.
Public schools for January 1st, we changed it from April 1st to the 2nd.
If everybody could please settle down. Excuse me, everybody, settle down. Good evening, everyone. The City of Grand Haven Special City Council Work Session of April 10th, 2023 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins, McNally.
Here. On the agenda this evening is a presentation by Chief Jeff Hawk, our Grand Haven Department of Public Safety Director, on a paid parking analysis. Chief, could you get going?
I can, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Jeff Hawk, Public Safety Chief. I was asked to put together an analysis of a paid parking system. I just want to start by saying a lot of work has been done by a lot of different people in the past on this. Committees, meetings. I just took a fresh look at it. And the questions I was trying to answer for you would be, what would the system look like? How would it be implemented? And what are the potential revenue possibilities? And I tried to take those revenue possibilities and be conservative and not overshoot. So my thinking throughout this whole thing was to overestimate expenses a little bit and probably underestimate the revenue side of it, because I don't want to be wrong. So that's kind of the thought that I had going into it. There's a lot of information in the memo that's attached to your packet tonight, including cost estimates for all 7 zones. I broke it down for those zones to be beach, which is from the entrance to the state park, south to Grand; waterfront, which is from the state park entrance to Chinook Pier; Peerless, which is first, second, Fulton in the city lot there that is inside the development; downtown, which is all the city lots, first, second, and third, and Washington; Centertown, which is the city lot, a portion of Washington and a portion of 7th; and then Easttown, which is a small portion of Ferry and a portion of Washington. So all those zones are broken down, number of spaces, occupancy estimates for those spaces. The system would be a kiosk and app-based system, is what seemed to make the most sense for Grand Haven. We'd have both kiosks within the zones, which would take card, coin, and cash or currency, and also you'd be able to start a parking session on your phone with an application and pay that way. So it'd be both different options. Parking season, I kind of followed what had been done in the past. Off-season, May and October; in-season, June through September. Seems to be what a lot of our other surrounding municipalities on the Lake Shore do. So that would be the parking season that all this data comes from. And then based on the questions you kind of gave back after the initial report went out, I went back and added in Sundays, so it's 7-day-a-week system. Added another zone, added Lake Avenue in for those angle parking spaces there, went back and looked at that. Hourly rates, I kind of patterned after St. Joe. They do $2 off season, $3 in season. So option A in your report is $2 off season, $2.50 in season. Went back with a question from council and refigured everything with $1 off season and $1.50 in season. So both of those estimates are contained in your report. And also, there's tons of variables that go along with this. The first thing I did was look, after calculating occupancy and the hourly rates, went back, worked with the consultants, worked on installation costs, annual expenses. Some of those things include the kiosks, obviously the physical kiosk itself, the data plan. They all run on cellular, so there's a data plan just like on our phones with the kiosk. There's a cloud plan for the software that the kiosk runs on for payment purposes, session purposes, so there's the cloud fee for that. Signs and pavement markings for all the spaces and areas in the zone. Software license for the overall software package. Enforcement equipment. A system like this is enforced primarily with LPR license plate readers that are mounted on vehicles. It's a camera that reads the license plate, corresponds back with the software in the system, and can tell if the car's supposed to be there or not, basically, or if it's timed out. Also handhelds that parking enforcement officers can use. And of course, personnel costs in a vehicle to run it all. So I did personnel costs at about $25 an hour for 3 part-time employees enforcing all hours of the week, and $10,000 for using an old patrol car and fuel, maintenance, etc. Picture of the car there is an example of Tannery Creek LPR, which is one of our vendors that I talked to. Those are the cameras on top of that patrol car there. What this boils down to, council, is this is just an estimate. You're going to have a lot of different ideas. There'll be a lot of different questions, and a ton of different variables on how this may or may not be set up. I'm neither for nor against paid parking. I'm for whatever you ask me to do, and whatever council's wishes are, and whatever the city manager's wishes are. My job may be to implement it, and certainly will be to enforce it. A lot of policy decisions here for council on, you name it, zones, season, hourly rates, spaces, things impacting these estimates would be street closures, parking space closures, special event closures. So if the one block of Washington is closed, we can subtract those number of spaces out of the equation. The parking spaces for expanding seating we can subtract. If we have special events in the marina lot, we can subtract some of those spaces because those events take up some of those spaces. So there's all those types of issues that are going to impact the balance sheet on what the revenue is going to look like. Exemptions, I did a calculation. I heard mention that what would it look like to exempt city residents? That's a tough calculation, so I subtracted 35%. I felt that was safe, but it's just an estimate. It could be something else. So if no city residents parked, subtract 35%. I don't know if that's dead on or not. That's going to be a hard calculation. We won't know that until you know, a year or two in, if it were implemented. So all those things are going to be policy decisions if you choose to pursue it. One special consideration on the Lake Avenue zone, I went out and looked at it, measured it out, calculated the spaces. I think we're probably going to have to do a crosswalk out there if we implement that one to get people safely across the street if we're going to charge them for parking. I know it's used now sometimes in the summer for overflow parking for the beach. I think it's primarily supposed to be for Mulligan's Hollow off-leash dog park up in there. But if we're going to, you know, formally cross people across the street, we're going to want to get them over to the sidewalk safely. Probably a good idea to do that. And we're going to have to probably do some gravel improvements at a minimum out there. Maybe down the road sometime, pave it in years to come. But at a minimum, probably do some gravel. And then I'm not sure if solar is going to work out there because of the tree canopy, so we might have to sink some electricity in. And there's a pole on that side near where those spaces would be. We could probably put a transformer in. So I put in, I think, $10,000 for that as well. So those considerations were calculated into that specific zone due to those circumstances. I think everywhere else, solar is fine. We won't have electricity issues. I think we've got plenty of sun everywhere else. Mayor, you had mentioned at one point the data connectivity out at the beach. It's a possibility we might have to put a booster in there, a booster antenna, if we can't get cell service out there consistently. So everything is detailed in the memo, in the report, and I'd be happy to take any questions. When I started this, I was nowhere near a paid parking consultant. When I finished it, I'm a little bit closer to a paid parking consultant. So,
Questions?
Well, first of all, Chief, thank you for putting in the effort and getting this before us, and especially all the background. You know, I wasn't part of that, and it goes back a couple of years, but it surely brings a lot of ideas that have been already brought forward in the community. You know, when you start looking at revenue of $3.6 million, I mean, that is some big money. And, you know, frankly, anywhere from $2 to $3 million is a tremendous amount of money for the city. It can surely supplement a lot of costs when it comes to what we're trying to do with our pension system. And I just believe this is something that we should implement. I think, you know, obviously we have to do some discussions within City Council and maybe, you know, within the downtown and so forth. I know there's a lot of people that are not in favor of downtown, but surely there's some big numbers in downtown. So, you know, I for one would like to try to move this forward. We have to obviously discuss with zones and so forth, but I think this is critical for the future of the city. You know, as I've said before, 45 or 50% of our budget that actually just handed out is police and fire. And, you know, I want to make sure that we continue to have the excellent police and fire force that we have. And this is one way to make sure that will happen way into the future. It also, you know, could be additional money that can help out the downtown, snow melt, let's go through all those issues. So I think it's something that we as a city absolutely have to look at. And I would, welcome, obviously, my fellow council people, whatever comments they have. But I'd like to try to move this forward in one way or another, especially along the beach and along the waterfront. I mean, let's get that implemented. I know there's been a lot of discussion about downtown, but I think in one of the comments that let's do it all at once was one of the recommendations, which I kind of feel is probably the way we should go. But I'm just one person on council. But I really want to thank you for moving this forward, both you and Ashley, and getting this before us, because it's a discussion that has been, in my mind, long overdue. But thank you.
Mike?
It goes back to history with me. I've been here probably the longest of most of anybody here. But if you take a good look at, let's see, 3rd Street, and you look down into the pavement there, and you'll see these little round rings down there. They used to have parking meters down there downtown all the time. There's a reason why they took them out. Because the malls came in, and what happened was we were charging parking, and they all went someplace else. They didn't shop here. And if we want a vibrant downtown, I said, yes, there's a lot of money to be made. Yes, I understand that possibility of a lot of money, but do we really want to? The downtown area, it's tough for them as it is right now to stay afloat. If you talk to some of the long-term people down there, it's an aging downtown. A lot of owners are getting older. I've been down there, I've talked with them, and I had some discussions with them, and they want us to slow down, just take a good look at it and see what we do for sure. I like to hear more feedback from them. They're not really a lot of them are not hepped up on the whole idea of having paid parking. And implementing the whole thing at one time is, I can't fathom that at all, to be honest with you. I have a hard time, because I seen what it did to our town when we were young, when I was younger, and it devastated our downtown. When the malls came in, like I said, and then they had the parking meters, and people just didn't come in. Maybe the younger generation likes to use all that stuff, but I tell you what, if you get to our town is being an aging town, we don't have that many youth, really, to be honest with you. It's moving out into the township and stuff, and they know how to go to Holland. Where's the paid parking at Holland? Go to Muskegon. Where's their paid parking? At the beach, not downtown. I mean, it's open, and if you start paying for that, it's going to be it'll devastate us. I've had a couple of business owners downtown told me if they have a couple more years like they had last year, they're moving out of town. They're not going to stay here. They can't afford to be in Grand Haven. So we have to make sure that we do this on a slow motion thing. Don't be in a hurry. Let's take a good look at it. And I'm not so hepped up on it yet. I don't know if these numbers are the correct numbers. I know you're not an expert at it, Jeff. I appreciate all your hard work on it and everything, but I don't know if that's the true numbers that we're going to see. I don't think it will be. I think it's going to be totally different than what you see. So I'm not in favor of moving forward right away with it and implementing all of them. I think we should just sit back and take a good hard look. Because if you look at the committee they had in 2022, they came up with, they asked them, and their recommendation, they made no recommendations on whether or not the city should impose paid parking. But they only want to see and look at what it might look like, but that's because they were convinced to it. But a lot of the business owners on there did not want paid parking, but they decided to move forward and look at it, and I talked with them. So I know you guys were looking at a financial thing, but I think there's some other things we can do also if we look harder, instead of trying to do that right away. These businesses are struggling. We took away the ones for the first block. We blocked off the whole street of Washington for them, and they got these businesses down there that they pay taxes to have the billboards sitting in their front windows. Then we block it off for them. Now they can't use it, and now we're talking about paid parking and everything else on that order. It's difficult for me to handle. I want to keep our downtown vibrant. I just hope it stays that way.
Thanks, Mike. Karen?
Yeah, Chief Hawk, I just had several questions and then just some comments because I think both Councilmember Fritz and Councilmember McLaughlin raised some, excellent points. First of all, thanks for the thorough analysis. As I recall, our request was specifically for the beachfront, waterfront paid parking because no analysis had been done on that. And I really appreciate you updating the others as an option, but it also gives us something to compare as we look at what might be right for our community. So I appreciate you going to the work so that we're looking at apples to apples instead of looking at old studies with reference to the paid parking. I had some questions, specifically around some of the implementation pieces. Based on your experience and some of the software that you're looking for, are there some that, like you said, use those scanners, that the ease of implementation, will you be setting up, I presume, a set of selection criteria for whoever you decide to, go with and come and recommend something, hopefully, that creates the least amount of work on your officers or on, the city in terms of management? Because I saw a couple things in your presentation. You talked about some of the scanners with the license plate registration, and then you talked about maintaining lists of, almost sounded like administrative time and maintaining lists of exempt vehicles. To me, that seemed like residents would be, or we would be entering or scanning in their license plate registration so that there shouldn't be a maintenance of a list, or am I wrong? Are some of the systems different?
So to speak to the exemption part of that for city residents a little bit, if you think of, how often people may want to change their license plate that is in the system to a different license plate in a different car, or how often they change cars, there's going to be changes in the list with the residents. There's a couple of different ways that it can be done. You could do permits and flag it in the system that way. So if the officer gets there and the license plate is flagged, if there's a permit, the officer would know that that city resident has a decal or a permit, however it's implemented. Administratively, we would have to, issue the permits and identify everybody as a city, or however you chose to do it, whoever you wanted exempt, will have to liaison with all that group and either issue a decal or get their license plate into the system,
Right.
which is going to take some administrative time.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I didn't know how, but we should try to look for a system that obviously would reduce the amount of time on any of your officers. You also talked a little bit about who would qualify, and I think there still has to be much discussion on that in terms of the, residents. We have residents who are property owners, and we have residents that are renters, and they pay to rent, an apartment here. We have to work out we would have to work out some of those things, and I don't think that's a discussion for tonight, but I would be opposed to anything that wouldn't include renters here in Grand Haven, and would only include property owners. So anyway, I'll throw that out there. I just think we need to consider all. The zones and the paid, in your experience, we have flexibility, I presume, to change the rates or even have varying rates by zone. So we could have different zone rates for, say, the Lake Avenue Cemetery that would be different from direct beachfront, correct?
Yes, I believe all that is possible.
Okay, which is why I kind of assumed that's why you organized some of these by a zone that would likely be grouped together. Let's see. Question on the Peerless Flats. I guess I have not examined the 246 spaces that are outlined there. They include the ones that are center square parking as well as the street parking surrounding?
City lot in the interior of that development.
That's
And then
That's our lot.
That's yours, yep, and then there's the spaces surrounding the development of yours, and you gave a street vacancy up for that development. There was a street there between Fulton and Jackson when that development was accepted and brought forward, and City Council vacated a street for that, and in return, you got the parking lot and then the parking spaces.
Well, that's very interesting. That's good to know. Thank you for including that. On Lake Avenue, also, you made a notation that there were 24 spaces that were in the street, and you referenced that in terms of where we needed to clean up the gravel and do the crosswalk. And then another 27 spaces in the cemetery parking lot that are backup beach parking. Is that correct?
There's a sign there encouraging folks to go in there for beach parking, for overflow beach parking, but I didn't include that cemetery lot.
Right.
Something that
Well-
is, it's not included, but completely up to City Council.
Well, you had the spaces there, and we, I think we could do the math, approximate what that would include. I guess my question was, as I understood it, we were supplementing the cemetery, is that correct, Ashley?
Correct.
And wouldn't it make sense to include those 27 spaces just as a way to help, the cemetery? As I understood it, they were still looking for money for now and the foreseeable future. Would that not be a way to help get them rather than taking it out of some of our capital investment and anyway, throw that out there as why would not include that, especially in season, with that Lake Avenue parking?
My thinking, when I went out there and looked at it, is I wasn't sure if City Council would want to charge people for parking at the cemetery.
People use it for beach parking, just, so, and I think if that helps offset the cost that we are bearing, for the cemetery, it's fair, it would be fair game.
Certainly something that could be added back in easily at the pleasure of City Council.
No, it would just be, one in terms of the cost, should the council decide to do that. See, I guess, a couple other just general comments. I think it was former Mayor Manetza that was quoted as saying this, that parking is not free. None of the parking is free here in the city. It's all stuff that we pay for. I personally am not excited at all, or not really supportive of the downtown parking, or the center town, or the east end around our merchants. I think our downtown merchants have enough load of various expenses that are thrown on them, from garbage dumpsters to snow melt to a lot of other things. We don't need to hang this on them as well. I do see the beach and some of the beach and waterfront as fair game and a great place to start. And the reason we have to remember why we're even here is because we have $28.4 million in long-term debt. We have an unfunded pension liability of $28 million, and we have Harbor Island out there for $40 to $80 million. We are highly leveraged, folks. We have to start to look at ways for people who, for people who are using our beaches in our cities to help defray the cost. I just don't want to do that at the expense of the merchants downtown. So to me, this is a great analysis. It shows an alternative way for us to approach paid parking without impacting the merchants downtown, by looking at some of these other areas out there. So I am supportive of moving ahead under those, those things, knowing that the devil, folks, is in the details. Chief, I would ask that you remember that as you look and evaluate systems and software, we're likely not to get this exactly right when we start. And so the flexibility of making some of these changes, whether it's charging on a rate per hour, different rate per hour on a daily basis, or being able to make some changes by zones, is really important, that flexibility, so that we can, nail this. Those are my initial thoughts, Your Honor.
Thanks, Karen. I'm I'm gonna actually take a break, and making you stay. Sorry, Chief. I don't have a lot to finish up with. I'm gonna ask but we're gonna take a 2-minute break, reconvene in the regular council meeting, and we will open the council meeting and then go back to the general session, if that's okay. So I'm going to adjourn the special meeting. Thanks, Chief. And then everyone who's out in the hall who'd like to come in and find a seat, you're welcome to come now. I'm watching them stack up behind you. For April 10th, 2023 is hereby called to order. Would everyone please take their seats? Ashley Good? And would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins, McNally.
Here. The invocation this evening is to be delivered by Pastor Don McGee of the Grand Haven Community Baptist Church. Thank you, Pastor, for joining us. Would everyone please rise for the invocation and remain standing and say with me the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father God in heaven, we are so grateful for this nation you've given us, for the safety and the peace that it brings us. we're grateful too for this beautiful spring weather that comes after the cold and the snow that we endure here. And we're just so grateful for all the people who help us through that time, whether plowing our streets or collecting our garbage or managing our utilities. And we just pray your blessing on them. I pray your blessing on all the proceedings that are going to happen here tonight, and everyone who has given their time to do that, to serve this community and to help us keep order and move ahead. And Father, we just pray for your special graces on our first responders, in our fire and our police department next door, and in our health care givers that are here to care for us, and in our rest homes. Thank you for this beautiful community that you've given us. We offer up a special prayer now. We pray for the safety of our children in our classrooms and our teachers in our classroom. And we are thankful that your word tells us that the name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run into it, and they are safe. And we are thankful for the way you have protected us, and we pray you will continue to do so. So I just pray for your guidance, and I pray for your peace, and I pray for wisdom in all the things that are brought forth tonight, that they'll be handled in unity, and they will be handled in peace and in compassion. So we look to you tonight to guide these processions, and just in the name of Jesus we come to you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I would at this point entertain a motion for approval of the consent and regular agendas.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe. The discussion. If we could, folks, I would like to pull item 10C off the consent agenda and move it to new business. Everybody okay with that?
Your call.
Yeah, okay, if you want.
All right. So can we vote on the consent and regular agendas as amended?
We make it the amendment first.
Yep. Item 10C from the consent agenda. Move to new business. Looks like it would maybe be new business number 12C.
Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
And second.
Lowe?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes.
All right, and the approval of the consent and regular agendas as amended. Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. We're going to, at this time, bring Chief Hawk back up and finish up the work session we started prior to the meeting. So if Chief would just join us for a few minutes. Thank you, Chief. I just have a few questions, and then we'll see if anyone else at the podium has anything else. I appreciate your work on this, Chief, and it's, to me, we're talking about the potential for bringing paid parking into the city. And I read the analysis, and it includes a lot of different assumptions by necessity. Assumptions about how often the spaces will be occupied, and assumptions about basically the only real hard fact we have is how many parking spaces we have in town, and then we've made really no decisions about which ones will charge for parking. So revenue is really sort of a nebulous idea out there, but you have some confidence, some level of confidence that if we implement a paid parking program, it will, its revenues will offset its costs and gain us revenue. Yes? Based on what you've looked at?
Yes, based on what I've looked at.
Okay.
And Mayor, I tried to be real reasonable and conservative in my occupancy estimates. A couple of those the zones I went lower, 20% off-season, 60% in-season. I think 30% and 70% in a zone like the beach is pretty reasonable, and we probably will do better than that.
Well, it looks
But-
better in the beach period, you know, between 11 and 5 most days. And it looks best probably on weekends, but there are plenty of days out there that there's no one on the beach, even in the summer, depending on the weather, until well into the day. So we can't know those things unless we try it. I guess that's part of the problem, is that we're looking at making assumptions about the revenue without having any real understanding of what our parking pattern is now, and then once we install some form of paid parking in some of the spaces, how that will affect who comes and who moves to a different area. So those are things that concern me. One of the other things I've seen is that a lot of the or at least some of the nearby cities, like Muskegon, I think, has a max day pass. Like during the week, $7 is the most you'll pay if you go to the beach, and weekends, $10 is the most you'll pay if you go to the beach. So, did you look at any of those kinds of issues?
No, Mayor, I think all those issues would be totally under the purview and direction of City Council to decide how the system is charged, what the fees will be. If you wanted to back into it and say something like, we need to make at least this much, there may be a consultant out there that can try to calculate that. But for my more simplistic purposes, I have to go with, here's how many spaces we have, here's what I think from my experience the occupancy will be, try to be conservative with it, and then get it in the ballpark. So another option would be to hire a true paid parking consultant, analyze the whole system, and get some estimates from someone like that. If we did that, I would recommend it not be a vendor that sells systems, right? We want to get an independent person to look, or a company to look at this with, you know, a set of fresh eyes that didn't have any skin in the game as far as selling a system. Or
Are there such consultants out there?
oh, there's consultants for everything, I'm sure, Mayor.
You
Yeah,
could find one? Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure there are.
I don't know that they would come up with any better analysis than what the chief has come up with, which is good. There are just unknowables out there. We don't know, because we're a unique situation, unless we had cameras and could uniquely identify resident versus non-resident and patterns of parking on sunny versus, you know, there's a lot of variables. I think you've done exactly what we wanted to do, and that's got very conservative in this. And the other thing I'd point out is, you mentioned the payback period. Those are extremely short payback periods. So even if you're off, it still is looking quite good. This is not years, these are months that you're talking about in terms of payback for the investment. And so
Were you going to let me
Very
finish,
reasonable.
Councilmember Lowe?
oh, I'm sorry, I just
It's
wanted
okay.
to pipe in.
Thanks.
My apologies.
No problem. I guess my other questions, Chief, what I heard initially when we started talking about this was no Grand Haven resident would pay for parking. And there are a bunch of different ways to look at that. One is property owners, but property owners aren't necessarily residents. Renters, certainly, if they rent in town, are residents. So there would be some of those issues, and then there's another question of, we traditionally provide the beach for neighboring communities, for many of them. Do we look at those things? These aren't actually questions for you necessarily, Chief. So there are many variables. The payback is something we think we can predict. I'll be honest and tell you, I'm torn. I am interested in the revenue stream, and I don't like the idea that we will drive people to other beach communities because either we charge for parking, period, or we charge too much for parking, or we make parking so difficult that regardless of what we charge, it won't be manageable. So those are real concerns for me, and those are the things that I would like some assurance from someone who's actually in the parking business as opposed to Chief who's in the public safety business about how these things generally work out. I don't know that those consultants do exist outside of the guy who's trying to sell you a system. Did the Chief, the software gets updated every year?
Well, I
Is that-
don't think it's on the software would not be on a set schedule, it would be on the company schedule, maybe updated more frequently than that,
And every
depending on
time-
what vendor.
Right, and every time it's upgraded or updated, we pay a fee. It's a,
Annual license.
yeah,
Which
okay,
would include the updates. That's pretty standard, I think.
yeah.
There's a couple of different systems out there. There are systems that are app-only, that only would start a session off of a cell phone application, whether that be Apple or Android. There are several systems that are both app and kiosk-based. So that's the system I looked at for Grand Haven, figured that we would probably need kiosks in the zones in addition to the cell phone app.
Okay. I don't really have any other questions, Chief. I appreciate your work on it. It's a thankless task. And I get that you don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I appreciate the work you put in on it. Mike, does that raise anything more for you?
No, it's pretty much, you covered quite a bit there. Everybody has done very good. I
Kevin?
think it's good.
One quick question. If we approved it tonight, which I know we won't, but how quick to implement?
So we have a kiosk at Franklin and Second right now. We've had it for 10, 12, 14 years for overnight parking passes for a lot of our lots. Talk to that vendor who we have an agreement with right now, Traffic and Safety, and just ask him if City Council wants to implement this and say they wanted 6 to 8 kiosks in a couple of different zones, how soon would that be possible? And he says 4 weeks to manufacture the kiosks, 2 weeks to deliver them, and a week to set them up. So you between 6 and 8 weeks implementation, I would probably say safe to add, to go to 9 or 10 weeks, because what's promised sometimes isn't delivered, and
Yeah,
so
thank you.
about that for a smaller size implementation.
Anything else, Kevin? Karen? Anything else?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Check here. I think that's, you answered most of the questions, and I too, like Councilmember Fritz, I think this is really good stuff. This is the first time we've been noodling over the updated study that includes the beach and waterfront, which was of interest to me individually versus the downtown parking. So I'm very appreciative of you updating this and helping us, digest this. But the purpose was for you to present this so that we can take it all in. I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you in the coming days, but then we can also get some feedback from the community on all this. Just, the devil's always in the details in some of the,
Sure.
so thank you.
And I wish, council, that I could lead 3 cheers for paid parking from the audience here tonight. Don't think that that's going to happen, so I'm sorry about that.
Stick around, Chief. I think there's some
Oh,
cheers coming.
You're in the very good hands of Sergeant James Todd DeVries.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you, Chief.
All I can tell you is I don't want Joyce Workman mad at me, so whatever she says, don't get her mad at me.
Okay,
Thanks.
we're gonna move at this time to the call to the audience. Members of the audience, this is one of 2 opportunities, the beginning and the end of the meeting. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration. Those not physically present who would like to may call in at 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. I understand we had some issues with the phone in the past. Ashley, do we know if it's working?
Tested it, and it is working as of an hour
As
ago.
of this evening. Okay, good. Chair recognizes Mike Weavers.
Hi, Mike Weaver, 637 Lake Avenue. Lifetime resident, had owned ice cream parlors in the 80s downtown when everybody was closed. I was one of the first people to even open on Sundays here before Myers or anybody else thought of it. Owned real estate companies. I've done real estate development. I've built condo projects in the city and outside. So I'm pretty diversified. I grew up on the other side of the highway for the first half of my life, this side for the last half. And so I've been over here over 60 years now, as Mike plus a few. So anyways, I got a pretty good grip on this town, and I've watched councils, and I've known city managers going back before Larry Deachin, and pretty much I've met every one of them. And I think it's always a noble cause to try to balance budgets. It's always important. But I think until you figure out where you went wrong, don't be trying to add new things, because that's what I notice around here. New people come up with new ideas and they don't understand the history. Mike will tell you, when we tried to do, one summer we tried to do paid parking at the city beach. Terrible, okay? These are kids that don't have any extra money. Most of them that park, you have to remember, we're second. The stuff you're talking about, those along the highway or along the roads, that's second tier at the beach. You can buy a pass at the state park for $15 for a year and go to all parks. You can go to Muskegon. I can go to Muskegon and buy a pass for $20 for the whole season. I get a free concert every day, 2 concerts on the weekends. I can go to Saugatuck Park for free, Holland Park for free. So think about who your competition is. I don't want to go over my 3 minutes, because if we want to do a test run, let's make this paid parking around the periphery of this building and around the community center and the lots around here. You'll get a feel for things. You're going to hear how your employees now have to pay to work. You're going to pay to come here to council. We're going to pay to sit here and speak. Let's start here before you put a burden on the rest of the town. You really don't understand what this town is unless you've lived here a very long time and done business here. You're probably going to hear from some others, but it's important. I saw this thing where you want to talk about it today and implement it next week, in 1 week. That is ridiculous, to not give our citizenry and our businesses a chance to talk. This should be vetted, and it should be more than 3 weeks. I have reviewed this. I see areas that are, in my opinion, flawed, that need to be addressed. Mainly, like I said, who our competition is and who you want to put in business and who you want to put out of business. Because you've ignored some areas that are going to benefit some people. Anyways, so I think I covered it. Yeah, I pretty much covered it. Oh, in regards to the memorial chapel at the cemetery, please do not charge people who are going there for a funeral. That's what that's used for. That is a memorial chapel. It was donated to the city. Do not charge people for a funeral. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening. Rich Clapp, 217 Grand Ave here in Grand Haven. I'm a resident of 20 years, and today I became terribly aware of a proposed drag show at the Kirby Grill. It's a business here in town. It's neither an adult venue, it's a restaurant. I provided for your reference sections of the city code. To me, it's a decency issue. I have 2 kids in school. I find that our town was founded on family values, Christian values. I have a problem with this. It's especially problematic because it's already in the city code as being prohibited. Specifically, section 6-181. I highlighted a few spots for you folks to look at. It says here, under item B, adult cabaret, a nightclub, bar, restaurant, or similar commercial establishment that features persons who appear in a state of nudity, live performances that are characterized by the exposure of specified anatomical areas or by specified sexual activities. No person younger than 18 is allowed to be on premises. And this is being proposed for Sunday, May 21st, 10:30 to 4 p.m. I wonder if there's going to be any kids there eating at Kirby, eating lunch, having brunch after church. I wonder who's going to enforce that. This is reprehensible. No owner, partner, performer, contractor, or employee of sexually oriented business, which I find this to be if you're going to have a drag performance at the Kirby, shall sell or provide goods, merchandise, or services to people under the age of 18. So I guess that kind of means you can't sell drinks or food at the Kirby that day, according to our city code. Any sexually oriented business offering live entertainment shall provide all the following: a dressing room for performers. It goes on, and I won't bore you with all the details. You can read the code yourselves. But they need to have a platform that's no less than 18 inches tall for them to stand on while they perform. They're not allowed to touch anyone in the crowd. Who's going to supervise this? It actually says Michigan State Police, the Sheriff's Office, and any police officer could supervise this and make sure that this code is being followed. Are you aware of this? I wasn't aware of this till this afternoon. I happened to get on Facebook and I got an eye full of something I just did not want to see. All sexually oriented businesses shall be open to inspection by the city. There shall be no physical contact, I mentioned that. Physical contact by a performer or any other performer and any person in the audience. Anyways, I suggest you review this. I find it to be rather troubling, and I think it affects the decency and the reputation of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clapp.
Can we move this up a little bit? It's been pushed back about 3 feet.
Sure, if you like.
Where it normally is. Anyway, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to talk a little bit about the parking issue. I would really like to thank Jeff Hawk for doing such a fantastic job, and the results, I think, are outstanding, or the potential revenue is outstanding. This is something that private companies would jump on. A consultant would say, you guys got to do it. You got to do it right now. One thing I would like to actually comment is on Lee Chapel. That is used for funerals, and I think we could have signs very easily when there's funerals just to say that there's no charge on the parking, and the people could respect that. But it is beach parking. That whole area of Lake is beach parking. We need to start looking for revenue. When I look at how much money we're on the hook for, meaning the taxpayers, I've talked about the $65 million for the rehabilitation and the redevelopment of Harbor. That's in our capital 6-year capital plan. We've got 28-point-something million in unfunded pensions. We need to go after some of this. We've got, what, $1 million left that you guys can raise taxes on us. The city needs money. We need you guys to be brave. We need this to be a topic of the election campaign. This kind of revenue is something that this city really needs to do. And I think if we make better use of Harbor Transit and we can have certain lots free, such as courthouse lot, I think a lot of things can be worked out. It's not like we're gonna say every space in the city is gonna cost. I just returned from a week's vacation in Traverse City. We spent every day for a few hours downtown. We paid for parking. It was not a tragedy. I mean, paying whatever, $4 for 2 hours, it was okay. I think we're gonna see that people are gonna not run away from Grand Haven. And I'd rather see it distributed through the city instead of just saying we're gonna do it at City Beach and we're gonna do it at the parking places in front of the state park. The gentleman was absolutely correct. You can get the little sticker for your license plate for almost nothing. and park at, you know, the state park. So to think that that's going to be where all the revenue is going to come from is, I think, incorrect. I think we need to do it throughout the city. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Doug Vance, 100 Washington. Pleased to see other people here talking about parking. It's not just me. We have May 1st coming up, and I still have no idea who designates what signs get placed where, but we now have Washington closed again on the first block, and none of the parking on the north side of Washington downtown is limited parking. None of it, other than the Main Street. I would like to suggest that instead of moving those concrete signs behind the copper posts this year, we transfer them over across from Kirby and Portobello's, so that they get to participate in what we always have to participate in. Just move it. You're not giving up any revenue because you'll gain the revenue from those spots instead of from our spots. And it will not affect my tenants. And when you think about it, and I'll put out a notice on shortly to let the tenants know, you can't park in the parking lot anymore. Now you can park on the street. I mean, how ridiculous is this? You can park on the street without any 3-hour limit, but you can't park in the parking lot with a 3-hour limit. So they're all going to vie for those street parking spaces that are closest to where they live, because they can't park in the parking lot closest to where they live. Please just instruct whoever needs to instruct whoever when they move those signs, just put them someplace else. Regarding the paid parking, the note I said is the state park is going to be a bargain and it's always going to be full. And yes, Kevin, your excellent point, 2 to 3 million sounds great. But guess what? As a business owner, we're looking for revenue too. My revenue is down almost 20% so far this year. We're looking for revenue too. And by increasing the city's revenue, supposedly, we don't know because it hasn't been tried yet, we don't know that, are you going to decrease the revenue of the businesses that are downtown? And it's not just, okay, we won't do downtown. If you do the beach and it forces people to go to Holland or who knows everywhere, instead of coming to Grand Haven when they're done at the beach, guess what? They aren't going to come to any of our businesses downtown because they aren't here. So it'll impact our revenue as much as it will the city of Grand Haven. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Lynn.
Lynn Nagan, 106 Washington, Matt Kite. I also appreciate what the chief has done for breaking down the zones for the paid parking. It does give us some options because I am under the impression that it's not going to be good for us as a city to do it through the whole city. And I'll give you a couple of reasons. But first I want to back up slightly and remind you all that in the chief's report, it does mention that maybe we could have the merchants validate parking. Well, validation is a tax on merchants. So let's keep that up at a high level. And the do it all at once, Kevin, was from the former city manager's report, which is full of blatant discrepancies. There are many people that I've spoken to who are on that committee who were never for that, even though the documents proposes to discover and solve issues in regards to paid parking. People on that committee have never been for it, still are not for it, even though this says that it solves some of the possible downsides. I also would ask that you prioritize the revenue. We've talked about everything from putting money away for future parking lot resurfacing, etc. And now we're talking about put it in the city's coffers to make up some of that the difference that we need. So I would ask that you be very specific on how we determine where that money goes, who receives the priority, because there's also been some talk about creating additional parking opportunities for private investments. And no, thank you, I'm not into corporate welfare. And last, we do not have the capacity to offset the negative social media that paid parking will bring to our town. We don't. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, because it's streamed, Joyce, sorry.
Hi, Joyce Workman, Vintage Green, 7 North 7th. I'm just here. This should be the 8th year for Flea on 7th, but because of COVID, is the 7th. I'm just here for that. If you have any questions, I know it's on the consent agenda, but I wanted to make sure that you knew I was here as well as some of my Centertown friends. So thank you.
Okay, anyone have any questions?
Hi, my name is Judy Boyle. I'm at 209 Washington. I appreciate everything that people have done in Grand Haven for the parking. However, about 15 years ago, I purchased a brick and mortar in downtown, and I really feel that I understand the problem that we have with needing revenue. I just think that when we start taking Centertown and the first 3 blocks and charging people to come in, I think we're going to change a little bit of the mix in Grand Haven. I think I heard somebody say we don't need any more bad advertisement for Grand Haven, but you know, I visited Holland, very nice. I visited Muskegon. And when you come to Grand Haven, I bought this building about 15 years ago. I retired after a long career. I had a dream, and I'm actually reconsidering my dream. I believe that when I listen to everyone and what they feel about the parking, I want to say to the people that live anywhere in Grand Haven, not just for the visitors that come in for the beach, but our people that pay all winter long to keep us alive and pay for everything that we worked so hard for, the brick and mortar, the street melt, all the things that we have to put in to get a business up and going. And then they want us to say, well, come on in, visitors, and you're going to pay to park to run over to get a card. Because I just want to go downtown, I want to get a card. I want to get a card downtown. I want to support the downtown. Or to come and get a beer. I want to get a beer. And I want to get it downtown, I want to support downtown. Or I want to get a gift. Or I want to get anything that you would want to gift. I almost feel like we are saying, as a person, as a host in my home, come over and have dinner, but bring the dinner. That is so not what I want to feel as a business owner. Please come to my home. I want to have you for dinner, but I want you to bring the dinner. I have spent probably most of my life funding this dream, and within the last couple of weeks, I'm rethinking it. I am looking at places back in Grand Rapids, and I don't think that I really feel 100% sure that a parking meter in front of my store to keep the people away from the coffee shops that keep us going all year long. Can't tell you how great it was this winter that I could go down to this way cool coffee shop and have a cup of coffee, or go down to a restaurant and have a bite to eat, because I am a local now. I haven't been all my life. But I really want people to understand that when somebody parks in front of my store and they have to pay for it, I don't know how I feel about that, saying pay for the parking and to come in. I hate to see our downtown get any smaller, and I hate to have our businesses, our small businesses, run out because of that.
Thank you, Judy.
Good evening. Tony Noto, 1223 South Harbor. Chief Hawk, again, just amazing information. It's a lot of time and processes of good and bad. We've been here before to do these things, and we're always looking on the bright side, not the bad side. So as far as council members, tough decisions are what you're there for. And it looks like, this has to be a win-win situation. So with that thought, where we're located, kind of on the east or south side, by ourselves pretty much, but we have an enormous number of folks. We've got some bike racks. I'm thinking about getting a couple more bike racks, just so that people have some portability to be able to, locate. So finding places for people to park, shuttle, those are just things that I hope that, you might be able to consider to look at. Harbor Transit in the past, it hasn't been necessarily available for us. They don't have Ubers like they do. Just got back from a little trip to Marco Island and Naples just to kind of see how they do it. And, there's lots of crabby shuttles, no fee, just tips. Just people up and down vacationing, willing to spend money. It sounds like in terms of the downtown, mentioned, obviously that would have some effect. I think what Mike mentioned in terms of trying things out here too, making things available, but providing some type of a shuttle for people to get there. We don't want to make this into a negative, situation. And again, it's kind of where we're all together just trying to come up with the best solution. I always say problems are opportunities, and if we can help to be a part of that, bringing in more revenue to be able to pay the bills, that's what we need to do. So I'm rather new to the Grand Haven area, but going to be here for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, we're going to move on. Maria, would you please read the consent agenda?
Item A, approve council special work session and regular council meeting minutes of March 20, 2023. Item B, approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,275,117.93. Item C has been moved to new business. D, approve a contract with AMS Displays LLC for the 2023 4th of July fireworks show in the amount of $28,000 and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. E, approve a special event request to hold the VFW Rib Fest on Friday, May 26, 2023 from 5 p.m. until midnight and Saturday, May 27, 2023 from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m. to include the closure of First Street between Washington and Columbus and City Parking Lot Number 7, amplified sound until midnight each night, and consumption of alcohol during event hours. F, approve a special event request to hold the kickoff to Summer Run at Mulligan's Hollow and on city streets on Saturday, May 27, 2023 from 8:30 a.m. until 10:30 a.m. and apply up to a $500 discount to the rental fee as outlined in the City of Grand Haven special event policy. G, approve a special event request to hold the Meetup and Eat Up event at the Farmers Market parking lot on Wednesday from June 7 through August 9, 2023 from 11:30 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. and apply up to a $500 discount to the rental fee as outlined in the City of Grand Haven special event policy. H, approve a special event request to hold the Tri-Cities Kiwanis Circus at Harbor Island on Thursday, June 22, 2023 from 2 p.m. until 10 p.m. and apply up to a $500 discount to the rental fee as outlined in the City of Grand Haven special event policy. I, approve a special event request to hold the Coast Guard City USA Run at the Mulligan's Hollow parking lot and on city streets on Saturday, July 29, 2023 from 7:30 a.m. until 11 a.m. and apply up to a $500 discount to the rental fee as outlined in the City of Grand Haven special event policy. J, approve a special event request to hold Flea on 7th on Sunday, July 30th, 2023 from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. in Centertown parking lots number 12 and number 13, to include the closure of 7th Street between Washington and Columbus Avenues. K, adopt the proposed rate recommendations for Harbor Island boat launch effective April 11th, 2023.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Any discussion?
I just want to say, the Flea on the 7th, that's nothing but a good event. It's been improving every year. Last year was just a fantastic event down there. I don't know if any of you guys went there, but it was very, very good. I'm glad to see you guys working very hard and moving forward. Every year seems to be better and better, so thank you on that. And the VFW, is that the same hours they had last year? Everything the same?
My understanding is yes. Dana's shaking her head, so yes.
Okay, that's another good event. I tell you what, it's a good thing going on. They use that money toward their scholarships and stuff also. They do that for us all. I want to say thank you to the VFW for that. That's all.
Wait, no thanks for the circus? We should say thanks for the circus. Anyway, every time we go through one of these consent agendas, I think we realize why we live in Grand Haven, because there's such a diversity of good people doing good things in it. And I'd just like to thank everybody who's done the work to make these things happen over the years. Please call the roll, Maria.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes.
That's a cruise always.
Okay, I'm going to open a public hearing concerning the request to vacate a portion of Sherman Avenue right-of-way, a portion of Harbor Drive right-of-way, and the undeveloped right-of-way known as Sandpiper Drive, as described in the initial survey in the buy-sell agreement with CL Real Estate LLC dated June 6, 2022, pursuant to Chapter 32, Article 4 of the Code of Ordinances. Declare the public hearing open. If there's anyone who wants to speak on this topic.
And I will just add, Mayor, that there were no comments at the Planning Commission's public hearing regarding this topic.
Okay.
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd just like to comment quickly on the existing easements and setbacks that exist on Sherman. As we all know, that we have the Sandpipers there, they have a sidewalk there, there's a good easement there, and I've looked at that drawing a number of times for the last 3 years, and I really never could figure out exactly what we're waiving now. We've talked about, I've heard people say, oh, we're going to put the condos right up there onto Sherman and so forth, which is not at all, doesn't follow the setback at all. So I'm really not sure what's being proposed. So I would hope that somebody could actually explain where the sidewalk is going to go, how far back the setbacks are going to be, because we're talking about waiving things when we have that building is all over the easements and so forth. I mean, it's pushed way out almost to the roadway on the the southwest corner. It's got the masonry, not even painted, big chunky thing. There's not even enough room for a sidewalk there. Are we talking about now grandfathering in that for them? I would certainly hope that it has to be torn down. I would hope that the little pump building or whatever it is, the red building, has to be removed. I just want to comment that, and I've been following this closely, and I really don't know what's going on there. So I hope that when you vote on this, you know exactly where the sidewalks are going to be, and we're not giving up sidewalks and other things that we expect in the neighborhood. Thanks.
Okay, could I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Do we need it?
No.
Okay, well then we don't need it, that's fine.
But
Yep,
you can just close it, Mayor.
I'm going to close the public hearing at this point.
Thank you.
And We have a resolution before us. Maria, would you read it?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a request to vacate a portion of Sherman Avenue right-of-way, a portion of Harbor Drive right-of-way, and the undeveloped right-of-way known as Sandpiper Drive as described as the initial survey in the buy-sell agreement with CL Real Estate, LLC dated June 6, 2022, pursuant to Chapter 32, Article 4 of the Code of Ordinances. Administration recommends approval.
So move.
In second.
Discussion. Maria, please call the roll.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. Item D, Maria, would you read it for us, please?
The mayor opens a public hearing concerning an application for a commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate requested by 1434 Colfax LLC pertaining to the rehabilitation project at 1434 Colfax Ave for a period of up to 10 years after holding a public hearing pursuant to Section 4 of the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, PA 210 of 2005.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to come up and comment on the commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate request.
I will say Elizabeth Butler from the chamber is here, and so are the owners of the property.
And do they want to speak on this project? Elizabeth? No?
I submitted my memo.
Yep, I saw the memo. How about the Knauths are here? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. You want to read the resolution?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve an application for a commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate requested by 1434 Colfax LLC pertaining to the rehabilitation project at 1434 Colfax Ave for a period of up to 10 years after holding a public hearing pursuant to Section 4 of the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, PA 210 of 2005. Administration recommends approval.
All right, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Yes, just for the viewers at home, since nobody discussed it at the public hearing here, Ashley, could you actually explain to them what we're doing, and or maybe
Elizabeth?
would you like to come up to the microphone and explain everything to the people at home so they know exactly what we're doing here and why we're doing it? It would be very helpful for them instead of us just passing it along.
Elizabeth Butler, Director of Economic Development, Strategic Directions at the Grand Haven Chamber. So a few months ago, we put in a commercial rehabilitation district along the Beech Tree Corridor. And what this does, it allows a property tax abatement. It in essence kind of freezes your taxes at where they are right now so that the property owner can use more of the capital to put into the building. And this can be for a period of up to 10 years. And it's a way to spur on economic development and create a vibrant corridor. And the Beech Tree Corridor is ready for this development.
Yeah.
Okay, so Elizabeth, I'm a little confused about the resolution because, and maybe I'm not, but when we created the district, what you told us was we create a district and the applicant comes in and asks for tax abatement, all right? And we at that point make decisions about whether to give it and how much to give.
Correct.
All right, so this resolution basically says that we are going to give it for a period of up to 10 years. So it doesn't really make a recommendation to us about whether we do that for 10 years in full, which is what he's asked for, or they've asked for, or whether we discuss among ourselves what is an equitable and good balance between an incentive to develop that district and tax revenue for the city. So does that happen later, or is that happening at this point?
I believe that happens at this point. You choose between a period of 1 to 10 years for the exemption.
Ooh, wait, I thought you told us before that you were gonna come back to us on that.
I think that's what we're doing now, and that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but,
right.
and listen, this is nothing against the development, because I think the world of both the owners and the development itself, but there's no pro formas, there's nothing that you're gonna present to us that shows the need for this. It's just carte blanche. I mean, I just don't want to set a precedent, that's all. I'm having
100% with you on this, Kevin.
I'm having a
And I
hard-
have
you know.
listened, believe it or not, I've listened to you as we've sat at this podium say, you don't have to give the maximum tax abatement. You just have to work with the project developers to sort out what's equitable.
Yeah, that's all I'm looking for, and I just hope, I just thought that was, for some reason, I thought they were coming back to us with those financial. And I'm sure they're gonna prove that it's 10 years, but I'd still like to see it. I think that's important.
Should we probably?
For the IFTs, for industrial tax abatements, one thing that we do is I do survey all of the people, all the businesses who have received that tax abatement to ensure that they are still following, that everything is, they're still meeting that abatement. And then I reply to council or send it to Ashley and to show the value of those tax abatements. And we could certainly do a survey for this.
I'm interested in your view and your view, and of course your views, but this is the way I looked at it, frankly, is this is a significant development in this neighborhood, and I'm excited about it. So I'll start with that, all right? But the difference in taxes that they're going to pay is substantial as well. And so if you give them 10 years of full tax abatement, we're essentially, it's a $750,000 investment in the neighborhood, and the city's into that for about $225,000, roughly, okay? And to be honest, I thought that was a little optimistic. But I am also, Kevin, and I am looking for a system where we could kind of decide based on what the ask is, what the investment is, what the benefit to the community and neighborhood are, and what is fair to the city. And those are the things I think we need to discuss. And I guess
I agree.
I'm prepared to do it here, but if you think we need more information,
I
I don't
don't
know
think-
what else is out there.
Yeah, I don't think I can make a legitimate decision without having some financials in front of me, to have a really good idea from Wendy's and Kurt's perspective on why they need 10 years. If it's everything that I have said, exactly what the mayor said, that being in the economic development world my whole life, I have a hard time giving tax abatements for a long period of time. And it has nothing to do with the project, as I said, but I think it's something that we have to have. So I can, I can go to the people that, the taxes are getting raised every year.
Yep.
To say, hey, listen, this is why we're doing this. And I have no problem giving a 10-year abatement if people can show me why they need the abatement. But just to give it carte blanche, I just have a hard time with that. And, I think it's your job to bring that to us and not just a carte blanche. That's just my own personal.
Mike, you got anything?
We should probably postpone this until we get more information as we ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No,
I mean, how much is that gonna hurt? Can I talk to the owners for a second? Wendy, is a couple weeks gonna really matter on this, just to put up some financials so you can give us some idea?
Oh, no.
Okay.
You want 2 weeks is what you're asking?
Yeah. Okay.
I believe the tax abatement wouldn't take place until the following tax year.
Right, but we're either gonna pass a resolution here or we're not, and I want, okay, let me just ask, Karen, have you got anything on this?
Yeah, I understand everyone's perspective here. In my view, this is kind of clear cut. We're just saying that we're freezing your taxes for that property at what it has been and what we've been collecting, so there's zero impact in giving you a certain amount of time before the investment that you are making in it, it's just a break for a amount of years for you to make the investment, get your business up and going, so that you can then pay the full taxes that are required on that property. So to me, it's pretty straightforward. I do think that there might be some middle ground here, and it would be easier to make that decision just, with a clear statement of, look, this is what they're paying now. This would give them this many years to recoup some of their huge investment, and that's why they're requesting 10 years versus 5 years, et cetera.
Right.
It would make it a little bit easier for us. So if we could just get some kind of reformatting of that, and I think it would be clearer to everyone here.
I just think it's a process that we should implement no matter who comes
Then we
before
can
us.
standardize it for whoever coming
Absolutely.
forward. So maybe we can work with you on that, finding something.
And I just will tell you that
for this particular one.
we've sat here and said we're looking at implementing paid parking throughout the community because we are revenue constrained. And I just want, I am interested in an incentive for that neighborhood, but I'm personally not interested in what I would say giving away the farm. So I didn't know how this works. It's the first time I've approached it, but I looked at what I thought was fair and what I thought might be a way to implement what we do for future projects. Because to me, that's kind of, we've created a district. I'm hoping there will be others who will come forward. And I said, if we took 10% of the project price, so the project is a $750,000 project, and we said 10% of the project cost, all right, and set that as a incentive, all right, and then used whatever tax years we need to push that out. And if it were me, I would probably front load most of the tax abatement in the first couple of years, and I would tail it off with lower percentages of tax abatement as we went forward. And I think that could be fair to, I don't know if there's a practice of that. I don't know what factors are considered, but I think that the rough justice of that looked workable to me and might be something that would translate to what we could tell others as they came forward. Some version of that. Doesn't have to be that number, but that's the number that I came up with looking at what we know. So I don't know how anybody feels about that, but
Your Honor, I would just like to add, though, we did, go through the whole presentation on the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, and the other thing that this council told you all was this is a way we can help invest without spending any money by, allowing that for a limited number of years. And so I think we're saying the same thing here, but I just want to remind everyone that's different than paid parking, which is an incremental addition to revenue.
But
Good,
it's
bad, or
all-
indifferent. It's different than, this is not taking away any revenue that we're currently receiving. It's delaying, sort of giving 4 areas that under this ad that fulfill the requirements of the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, which this particular property does and falls under that district. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that there is a difference.
And what I would say is revenue, and we all sat and agreed that we should create a district, but we all agreed that we would discuss what would be the appropriate level of tax relief as each project came forward. And that's all I'm asking to do.
Can I ask a clarifying
go ahead.
question? Are you looking for the specifics of this project, or are you looking for a system, an overall system for the whole district?
Well,
Or both?
I don't know whether you could come up with the second of those, but I would love to see some, is there a practice somewhere in economic development that it's how people have looked at things? I mean, I would think, frankly, that these are the things I looked at and I thought, what's the value of the investment? What's the benefit to the community and the neighborhood? What's the timeframe, and how much revenue is the city giving up if this goes forward? So, and gaining. As Karen says, you do gain, because right now, that property isn't paying much in taxes, and if it's developed into something really nice, which I think is where we're headed, we'll end up with significantly more revenue
I
over
mean,
the long haul.
any developer puts together, not just,
Just like a TIF.
no, any developer puts together pro forma
No,
on their business.
that's what I'm asking you, Kevin.
And they're
'cause-
gonna say, you know, their expenses, their revenue and their expenses, their debt, and then how much you're gonna pay for taxes. And that's what I'm looking for. At the end of the day, hey, listen, in the first couple of years, we can't pay nothing, and I totally understand that. But come 5 years, years 5, 6, and 7, maybe we can contribute something based on our pro forma. And I understand pro formas are pro formas. I mean, everybody makes pro formas look better than they are, but in this case, I would really like to see that. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for anything more than they probably already have. I'm sure they put something together, and I'm just kind of looking for it.
I will definitely work with the owners.
Okay.
And if council is interested in an internal guiding policy when it comes to incentives of this nature, when I was researching one of our previous with the Crescent Theater building, a previous incentive granted to that property owner. At that same time, council appeared to have been considering a guiding policy when it came to those types of incentives that we could internally work to build if there were interest, as well as far as how you would review and grant incentives of this nature.
Right. I think that we need a right answer for this project, and I would like that right answer to have some relationship to what we might consider for future projects in the same corridor, in the same district.
It's no different than a loan. If you came to us for a loan, and your pro forma showed that you could repay the loan in 10 years, but then you came back to us and said, you know something, here's my numbers. Give me another 5 years. That's all I'm looking for. If you come back to us in 5, I won't be here, but if you come back to here in 5 years and say, listen, this is what our numbers are. It's nowhere near what we thought. We know it, the developer, which is a separate organization, I assume, we just haven't got the revenue that we thought we were gonna get. I would think that anybody on the city council would be absolutely sympathetic to that and would help you out. That's all we're looking for.
That's a question for Elizabeth. This is obviously the first time that I have done this as part of council. Can council approve like a set amount of years and then have, the applicants come back for this, second half, like if we're looking at ways that we could standardize that, is 5 years a reasonable middle ground? And then can that happen under this, or does it all have to be approved at once?
There is a very good set of frequently asked questions that the state of Michigan has on their website, and I can get you a copy of that.
Thank you.
It'll include that in there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I hear is we need a motion to
postpone it till
action on this until,
The
I'm gonna say
first
not,
meeting of May,
of May,
not
first meeting
next
of May,
week,
not
but
next
first
week.
meeting in May.
It's not gonna affect you anyways.
That way you'll be able to
Okay.
handle it all then.
okay, Mike, are you making such a motion?
Yes, I make that motion.
And Kevin?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that?
No.
Maria, please call the roll.
Fritz?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. Okay. The next item, Maria, would you read it for us?
New business A, consideration by City Council of a resolution to authorize a parking lot license agreement with Grand Power Works LLC for the use of 19 parking spaces at the Northwest Ottawa Water Treatment Plant and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. Now's board recommends approval, administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
And second.
Is there discussion by anybody but me? Because I got some discussion, unfortunately. I've been following this. The parking issue has, I think everyone understands that the diesel plant, if it turns into an event center and restaurant, will have some parking constraints. And I've kind of watched this go through Planning Commission, and I went to the most recent Planning Commission meeting where essentially the Planning Commission gave a 25% reduction in required parking and still voted to approve the project, but they were told that, and to do, for a 25, they were not interested or willing to entertain greater than a 25% reduction. And the project still needed 19 parking spaces. And I had seen at a previous council meeting that those 19 parking spaces were going to be from the water treatment facility. And I thought that was a little creative, but I was willing to go with it until I read the agreement. And the agreement is not for non-exclusive use of those parking spaces, which frankly means there's no parking spaces for them to use in any way guaranteed. And I think that if that was what was presented to Planning Commission, their decision on moving this project forward may have been significantly different. So the question to me is, there's two ways we can vote on it tonight, acknowledging that basically this agreement for non-exclusive use of 19 parking spaces really guarantees nothing and doesn't meet what I believe was the intent of the Planning Commission's action. I would, if they'd been given the details of this, I would have liked them to have had the details before this came back to us. So we can vote on the agreement tonight. The agreement itself, I don't actually have a problem with, but at the point at which it says, let's see, resolution parking, to use 19 parking spaces at the agreement itself is not a problem, but to use that agreement to bootstrap the project at the approval of the Planning Commission, frankly, I think was disingenuous. And I don't like to see us working that way. So I'm not sure what the solution is. My preference, frankly, even though it will delay things even further, is to send it back to Planning Commission and ask them to look at it. Say, this is the agreement we have. Does this meet with your approval? Do you still recommend approval of the project?
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
In conversation, this was drafted with our city attorney, and he did clarify, just to be clear, this edition was city edition, not a developer edition, and it could be approved contingent on adding the exclusivity if preferred. Developer certainly would be happy with that. Our intent was to just maintain some public access in those off times without, while also agreeing to not sign another exclusive or private lease for those parking spaces. The city attorney did acknowledge the concern today and again reviewed that he feels that this agreement as drafted does still satisfy the Planning Commission requirement. He advised against adding exclusivity, but again, that was a city condition. We could certainly make or approve it contingent on adding that back into the agreement or postpone. This is the final municipal contingency before we were to start that 30-day countdown for closing, just as an aside.
And just for clarification, though I appreciate, I actually talked to the city attorney as well, and I appreciate his insight. This, to me, isn't really a legal question. This is a values question. That's the way I see it. I feel like we sent this to Planning Commission. They said, we're okay with it so long as you get 19 parking places somewhere else. And we said, we got 19 parking places somewhere else. I feel like we're undermining the Planning Commission. That's where I am.
Well, may I interrupt the mayor? I mean, I have a few words here. Is that the city of Grand Haven owns Snug Harbor there. And when they first came into it, if you go back in the history of that, is right across the street was a Michigan Gas Utilities, and they had parking spaces, and they allowed us to use those parking spaces. And also, they went down the line, and it used to be Wessel's TBA, and they also used their parking spaces on their property also. So it's not we're changing anything different. We've done this in the past, in that we've used up parking space where they could get them, whoever would allow them and said yes. And if the North Ottawa now says that it's okay with them, it doesn't seem to bother me. We've done this before in past history. It's not like it's something new. This is not a new thing. It's maybe new to everybody here. It's not from this area. We went through it all. We've done this more than once for a lot of you. We do it for the cafe downtown. For that, we gave up park. We said, okay, it's.
We've done it for Notos.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
All over. We've done it. So
And I'm not, and I'm not opposed, and I'm not opposed to that either.
But-
If we say, I get what you're saying, Mike, and it's okay with me to vote on it.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't want our planning commission left with the sense that we end arounded them. I don't know what the right verb is, but you know what I'm saying.
You
that
don't
we
want to
ran
strong
around
arm
them.
them, basically.
Well,
Tell them, say, hey,
or
we're good.
even just ignore what they said. I think what they said was fairly clear, and I think this doesn't get to what they asked for or what they recommended. Now, I'm actually okay with us saying we'll take it out of their hands and we will make the decision here because it is our decision. I just want to make sure that we are honest about what we're doing. Okay.
I'm good with that. I'm good
Anybody
with
got
that.
anything else?
No.
All right. Does it require a vote, a supermajority, if it's a property matter?
Not for
Only
a
for the
parking
sale,
lease.
not
Yeah,
for the parking
sale.
lease. Okay. Would you call the roll, Maria?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
No. Okay. Maria, would you read the next item of business?
Item B, resolution to incur cost of repair to the existing retaining wall adjacent to the public access boardwalk in the Highland Park Property Association near the southwestern lot line at 64 Poplar Ridge, not to exceed $21,192. Administration recommends approval.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion on that.
Hang on one second.
Wait.
You're going to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, discussion, and we're going to recognize, are you Mrs. Bigelow?
Yes.
Okay, could you, I appreciated your package very much. It had a lot of history in it.
Just a few documents.
Yes, just a few documents. I'd be interested in hearing what you've got to say.
Well, my name's Marietta Bigelow, 64 Poplar Ridge. My neighbor, who's also my cousin, Mary Sweet, is number 65. First of all, thank you for reviewing this and considering this. I've been working on this with Brian Urquhart, who couldn't be here tonight, but I think he had talked with Ashley about it, and he's been very helpful in guiding me through this. Both Mary and I have a long history in Grand Haven, starting with our great-grandfather, and the cottage has been in my family since it was built in 1897. The retaining wall that we need replaced was probably built at the time the association was founded in 1886. So it's had a pretty good long life. It has been deteriorating for several years, leaning and cracked in some places, pushing the stairway out of the way. So this has not been an easy project. It's been hard to find somebody willing to work on it. The contractor and the engineer are both here tonight to help answer any questions you might have. The information, you know, there are a lot of walls in Highland Park, and this one was on the study that you did back in 2019, and it was failing, and it's getting worse. So I have to do something about it, and because of the location and the difficulty of getting to it, it's not like, you know, you just drive up the road with a big truck, take the wall down, and put the new wall up. There's only less than 8 feet width to work with, so getting equipment up is very difficult. So that's why I've asked for the city to consider contributing, because that was sort of set up before in 2020 when we were going to try to work with a third city, a third property owner, and a third the association. The association members voted that down, so that's why I'm asking for maybe possibly a third from the city and 2/3 from the property owners. I've given you a lot of information, so I don't want to go into more detail, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions, and they will also give you some comments on the construction process.
I'm gonna let you know, I met with the city manager this morning after reading your extensive package, which I do appreciate. When I finished it, I was left, frankly, with 3 questions. And the first one was, are we obligated to pay for this wall? And the second one was, if we aren't obligated, are we legally permitted to pay for this wall? And the third one, frankly, was, even if we're not obligated but we're permitted, should we pay for this wall? And some of those are legal questions. And so, frankly, I asked Ashley this morning, I said, listen, I believe, based on the review of the documents you provided, we are not legally obligated to pay for the wall. And at the point at which we're not legally obligated to pay, the next question is, are we legally permitted even to consider it? And that's something I thought we needed advice from the city attorney for. So I knew you were coming tonight, and I knew you were bringing your consultants, and I think we should listen to anything you want to present to us in addition to the extensive package you provided. But Ashley did talk to the city attorney this afternoon or this morning, and what he has recommended is he take a look at the legalities of it before we make any decision on it. Is that so? I think I'm going to recommend we postpone action on it. But in the meantime, is there any questions that you guys have, technical questions about the design of the wall? Because I knew she was bringing her engineer, and I thought, I don't want to make them come back twice.
Can I just say this one
Yes.
comment? Those are all excellent questions, and I understand your concerns. Probably the most, a lot of the basis for this was the 1997 agreement that the association did with the city when we bought our parking lots. And under there, in the paragraph under retaining walls, it does say that the, where is it? The city shall maintain and repair the retaining walls depicted on the drawing attached as Exhibit B to and hereby incorporated in the agreement by reference. But the city intends, and the association acknowledges the city's intent to specially assess the parcels benefiting from such maintenance and repair. So that, and it is a legal question, but in the past, there was the one time that the city did the huge walls at the end of Poplar Ridge, and they did share in that expense 1/3, and the 2 property owners together paid 1/3, and then everyone that parked up at the end paid 1/3. And then the other basis that I was going on at precedent was the study done with the city and Abbenmarsh engineers, and there are several walls in there. This one is the one I'm really asking for. The other ones I'll have to take care of myself. But because of the combination of it being partially on my property, partially on the city's easement, it's a public walkway. It's for safety, there's the red firebox up along that boardwalk. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to go look at it, but if you did, you would see the complication of doing this and the reason why it is a little bit more expensive. So that's why I was asking for the city to consider contributing based on past experience.
Right, I'd like to make a few comments, because when Mrs. Bigelow dropped off her packet at my house, I actually went out and, I'm familiar with where it is. We have the photos, but I went and looked at the wall as well. And as she said, in the 1997 purchase agreement, it's clear that there is some responsibility by the city to act just like they would on any curb or road or, in the city to repair. It was by our consultants, city consultants, Abbenmarsh, considered this particular wall, of all the walls they looked at, a severity level 3 failure, which they only went up to 4, and out of the 17 properties that the prior council approved to this third, paying a third, only 7 of the walls, 2 of which are included in your proposal, were severity level 3 or 4, meaning almost imminent failure, and that was 2021? Yeah. So looking at that, I would like, if we are postponing to the attorney, I would have some very specific questions to ask the attorney to look at in consideration of this, because I also wonder, since one, City Council agreed to pay for that back in 2021. 2, we do have this agreement. There is some precedent, not just the Poplar Ridge retaining walls you talked about that the city shared a third in, but on the corner of Lake Avenue and Highland Drive, there was a property to the north of Lake Avenue that the city paid 50% of that retaining wall, adjacent to a busy street. But just in terms of comparison and context, with the severity wall and the safety considerations of this, public walkway on our easement, there's certainly, I want to also know what our liability is given all of those things and us not moving forward.
Anything else, Karen?
No, I think, let me just check. I think there were a couple other things that jumped out at me. And your proposal, just so I understand it, is that you and Mrs. Sweet would pay for the 2/3. You're asking the city to honor their commitment made in 2021 to pay a third. Right, sorry. Is that correct?
Kevin, got anything?
No,
Mike?
I remember us going to Highland Park and having a proposal to them for 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 for the association, 1/3 for the owner, and 1/3 from the city, because if I remember correctly, I think it was part of our obligation to maintain some of those. If I remember what the reading was back when the lawyer came back to us the last time it was on there.
Yeah, the city attorney said he's never looked at this issue.
Well, he didn't.
He hasn't.
Scott Smith did when he was here, if I remember correctly.
That could be true. I don't know, but I think Ron was here when the last offer was made. So, and I probably read things a little different than Karen did, but basically what I read, Mrs. Bigelow, was that easement, that right-of-way, it's called, is really a utility right-of-way. It's not a pedestrian right-of-way if you read what's reserved. And most of that property was conveyed to Highland Park Association when the parking spots went over. And I just want to point out, maybe for the record, Karen, you're a member of the Highland Park Association, so you may have a conflict here. But just because the city said they'd maintain it, then they also said their full intention was to assess the benefited parcels. It's a legal question, honestly. I read it and I looked at it and went,
I'm in favor of
it's a
moving
legal
it.
question, and I'd like Ron to look at it. And Ron got an initial read on it and said, yes, I've not looked at this before, and we should postpone. So,
And Your Honor, I agree to postpone, but I would just object to you suggesting that because I live in the neighborhood, I shouldn't speak on it. I don't think anyone said just because you live on Franklin, you couldn't speak or vote about Franklin Avenue. I do live in the neighborhood. This is not a walkway or stair that I particularly use, but I believe it is legitimate, and I am perhaps close enough to know, just like Councilmember Fritz knows history around, I know a lot of history around some of these pieces. So I would just ask the city manager, I have a number of questions and specific things that I would like the city attorney to look at relative to our liability, as well as the specific language in here.
There was also the quitclaim deed attached to that purchase agreement of 1997, referring to the reservation of the easement and the repair and maintenance of the boardwalks, that the grantor, which would be the city, the location, relocation, construction, installation, all of this goes on, but ingress and egress ingress to and egress from any area or property located in the Highland Park area by any fire, police, ambulance, emergency medical, snow plowing, utility, and other vehicles. So I'm not exactly sure because I don't know that there ever was a recorded easement. This all was before, my family purchased the lots in the 50s. I don't know if there ever was an easement, but it also is access for the fire department too. So it's not just a utility.
It's a safety, there is a safety issue here, right.
The general public does use that boardwalk and that walkway a lot. Exercise groups come through and people like to walk on the boardwalk because it's got views of the lake. So it is used quite a bit by the general public
Yes,
as well
ma'am.
as our association.
I'm aware, and I've used it myself, and it's a beautiful place. To me, it's a legal question, and I think that our city attorney ought to look at, because if we're not obligated, from my perspective, we don't have the authority to spend public funds on it. I know it's been done in the past, Mike, but if we're not obligated, it shouldn't have been done in the past, and I'd just like to look at that.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Is that all right if they explain anything of the construction?
If you guys have got questions on, I think that
No.
that it was,
I figured
that
those
it was,
guys could design a wall.
and to be frank, I think they're going to be better at getting it up there than we're going to be able to contract for from the city. So, I think that an advantage to having the city do it is the parcels get assessed, so it's paid off over a period of time. And when I looked at it, that was the only advantage I could see to getting the city involved directly in it. So it's a legitimate question that you've posed, and I appreciate it. I think we should look at it, but I think it needs our city attorney to take a look.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
But we should
Mike?
be able to do it
Yep.
next week.
That's what I
if we get
was going to ask.
yeah.
Can Ron get back to us before next week? Because we're having a meeting next week, and we can get back on it.
Then we can settle it
We
next
can
week.
postpone it till next week and go from there.
Yes,
Well,
I can prompt
try.
them to
Yep.
try to have
Want
more.
us to specifically postpone it next week, or just do a more general postpone until the attorney can review? Because there's always a possibility he can't review it
Okay.
all until
Right.
We'll
next
do
week.
it
And
as-
what I would say is the documents you provided were very comprehensive, but there may be others he has to locate. I don't know, so I'm not, yeah.
Postpone it till attorney's
The
review.
attorney has been able to review and.
Yeah, but hopefully next week, and I
guidance.
will also get my questions to
It
you.
would be nice if if we all know what the questions are, it would be really nice. I mean, even the public would like to know what your questions are. Go ahead and ask them if you want.
Oh, I think the mayor and I could both submit, like she's already submitted
you
them
can both-
questions.
okay.
I'll submit it, and then we
Submit
can
'em
publish it
and-
all.
and
Yeah,
publish them. Very good,
Please.
thank you.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And just, this is a motion to postpone.
Until the city attorney's weighed in on this matter.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Thanks. Okay, next, Maria?
Next, we have consent agenda item C, which has been moved to new business. Consideration to approve a request from West Shore, Michigan DeColoris Ministries in the city of Grand Haven, County of Ottawa, to be recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Are you here to address us on this issue?
Yes, we are.
Can you introduce yourselves, please, and state your addresses?
I'm Ruth McCaleb. I live at 13041 120th, Grand Haven.
I'm Tina Grennan. I live at 1248 Howard in the city of Muskegon.
Okay. You want to tell us what's going on?
West Shore DeColoris is a ministry that has the opportunity to do a bingo night at Select Auditorium to help raise funds for our ministry to further our work, I guess,
Yeah.
God's kingdom. And And so we are looking into getting a license for our ministry
To have
to
the
be able to do
game
it.
night. And this is a stipulation of the state of Michigan that we come here and get your permission that we are a 501c3.
I pulled it off the consent agenda, and I'll let you know why I did, is because the only connection I see that your group has to Grand Haven, we're gonna certify that I'm sure you're wonderful people doing good work, all right? And I know that to be the case, but the good work isn't in the city of Grand Haven, and we don't know much about you. And so, basically, your only connection, as far as I can see, to the city of Grand Haven is that you have a mailing address here.
No, our mailing address is here, our PO box is here, but we're considered West Michigan Decolores, and we host weekends all over West Michigan. So we've hosted many, many weekends in Grand Haven at Hope Church. We actually have a weekend happening at Second Reformed Church in August. We've at First Reform, I believe they've had one. There's been several churches and
Within the city limits.
within the city limits of Grand Haven.
Then my reservations are dispelled. That information wasn't before us. I looked at it and kind of went, all the directors are from out of town. Their gaming is going to be in Muskegon.
In Muskegon, yeah.
So I couldn't really figure out what charitable work you were doing that I could certify you were operating.
And the state of Michigan required us to
Yes.
do it by our address. And so because our mailing address is our PO box here in Grand Haven, because I live in Grand Haven and I'm now.
You handle the mail.
Pardon me?
You handle the mail.
Yeah, well, yeah, I handle the mail, but I'm also the acting past president. I was the president for the last 2 years for West Shore, so, and I've been part of the movement for almost 11 years now, so everything gets handled through me, through that kind of.
My understanding of the gaming, seeing my brother was president of the Eagles and they had to go, for the gaming commission and stuff in that order for different things that they do, is that wherever your address is, where you have to apply for it, even though you're going out of the community with it, but the state requires you, as you have your mailing address and your businesses in Grand Haven, that's where you have to go to, and it's a state regulated through the gaming.
And I did, I called the state lady, we call her, and asked her, where do you want me to go? Do I need to go to Grand Haven or City of Muskegon? And she said Grand Haven.
I understand that, so I don't have any reservations. I
Okay.
understand.
Can I
how
get
it
a
works.
motion, Mike? You want to give me a motion to that effect? That,
I think I already did.
We have a
We already have
motion.
a
Motion and a second.
Okay,
Yeah.
then, could you call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a form that I emailed that had to be filled out. When do I retrieve that form? Because that has to be sent in with our license application.
I will send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That work?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for coming out, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay. Unfinished business?
Consideration by City Council of a final resolution to amend Chapter 20, Section 20-2 of the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances by amending residency requirements for Human Relations Commission members. Human Relations Commission recommends approval. Administration recommends approval.
So move.
And second.
Discussion? Call the roll, Maria.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. Report by City Council. Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, I got a few things. There's also still making a fundraising for the basketball court going on out there at the East End. They're selling bricks and stuff like that. If I remember, the mayor at the last meeting said she purchased some bricks.
I purchased 2 bricks.
And I'm in the process. I'm working with Kenny Formansma on that and helping him out. So just want to make a point out there, people, if you got a chance, please step up. It's a great little area. It's right next to what they call Fritz Field, which is named after my dad for all his hard work he did for Tri-Cities Kids League. And it's going to be a great great thing. If you've seen all the kids that are out in that area use it, so I was just out there and I seen a nice basketball game going out there, so it's a good fundraiser to go. And Kevin and I, on Saturday, we ended up not knowing we were both at the same game. He's a Red Sox fan, I'm a Tiger fan. And of course, we got not the best end of it, but it happened to be my birthday, and I got to be on the big screen. I had a fun time, though.
Yep.
But the
Great
Tigers,
place.
yeah, it was a fun time, right, Kevin?
Yep, had a good time.
There we go.
Better that we won, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, Red Sox won. But what's really interesting is I found out there was the guy sitting behind me said, "How come there's so many Red Sox fans here?" And I always found out this Ort is from West Michigan. He pitched for him for the Red Sox, so he had his whole family and friends sitting behind their dugout over there, and it was, I mean, they were very vocal. So that's all I have to report.
No,
Thank you, Mike. Kevin?
I'm good, thank you.
Karen?
Yeah, I just, a couple short things. First of all, belated happy birthday to Councilmember Fritz, whose birthday was on Saturday. He happens to share his birthday with my mother, who's watching tonight. So, Mom.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you, too. On March 21st, I attended, along with Councilmember Cummins and maybe a few others here, the Tuesday Forum series sponsored by the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, Chamber of Commerce, and the speaker was Justice Richard Bernstein, who in 2014 became the first blind justice elected to the Michigan Supreme Court. And he spoke about diversity, inclusion, and why it matters. And just a couple things on that, it really did bring home, the fact that how important diversity is, and diversity of thought, and listening to one another and being able to share and speak, different points of view, and that all of us as individuals, certainly all of us as council members, we're all shaped by our life experiences, and all of us have very unique life experiences that shape our thinking, and those life experiences and struggles, quite frankly, also allow us to have empathy for others and give us the ability to try to understand others. So I thought that was a really important thing for our community, that's maybe polarized on any one decision or even on council. And one thing that he did mention that I thought everybody can relate to is he talked about what it feels like to be excluded when we're talking about diversity and inclusion. And he made the analogy to how you felt in high school or middle school, and how it felt to be not included, and how it felt to be unwanted, isolated, and how painful that could be, just in order to sort of get our arms around that. So diversity and inclusion in general, how important that was to us as a community. I thought it was an excellent, I would say lecture, because he seemed to memorize the whole thing. But I would recommend, I believe the Chamber of Commerce still has the links to this entire series on their website, that you can go out and anyone can view that. But it was a very good one, so if you have the time, I suggest going back and watching it. And that's it, Your Honor.
I just have a couple things. I met with a group that was spearheading the establishment of the Children's Museum in Grand Haven. Very enthusiastic, very interested in pushing forward with something that I think could be a real asset in our community. I attended a Centertown meeting. They've all departed, but they had some good issues they were discussing. And I just want to put in a plug for there's a fundraiser at Eagles on April 22nd for the new K-9 for the Department of Public Safety. It's from 2 to 7 p.m. It's open to the public, and anyone who's got goods or services they'd like to donate to auction should contact the Department of Public Safety. I also attended a state park meeting, and there's a constituent who's always very interested in what went on. So I took some notes, and I hope they're good. They've wrapped up hiring for their summer staff. They've taken sand relocation bids. The campground traffic closure is ending, and the campground will open, it looks like May 1st. The general parking lot open, I think also May 1st. They've got some sand removal issues first. Let's see, they said their friends group has done something called a Moby map. I'm not sure what it is, but apparently it improves handicap access out at the park. And they were talking about a busy summer with Kite Fest, a soccer camp, soccer in the sand, volleyball tournaments, and Nora's volleyball leagues. Let's see, they said they'll have an increased conservation officer presence for the 4th of July. They will pool conservation officers from across several districts. They reported on some information from the Army Corps of Engineers, including dredging for the outer harbor in Grand Haven will begin in May. The sand from the dredging is going to go over to Ferrisburg's North Beach. The wave attenuation work on the North Pier continues, and they said they're designing some improvements for the North Pier end. They said the design work is being done now, but the end of the pier, which needs some help, the work won't be done for a couple of years. The fences are coming down the second week of April. They'll be grading the sand the third week of April, and by the end of April, the beach should be in good shape. That's all I got. Ashley?
Good.
Okay. So just real briefly, the traffic signal removal at 5th and Washington, right at this intersection here, begins tomorrow. It's a 10 to 14 day project overall, depending on weather. So expect some rerouting across that intersection. Our snow fence at City Beach came down last week, so sign of spring there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with the two approvals tonight in relation to the diesel plant development, we have with those approvals begins the 30-day countdown to closing. So their closing deadline is now May 10th. We have a tentative closing scheduled on May 8th. So more to come on that. That's all.
Okay. Maria, do you have anything for us?
No.
Okay, good enough. At this time, we'll have the second call to the audience. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers.
Good evening. I emailed...
Hold down the mic.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. I sent an email this afternoon to the city.
Could you tell us your name?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Name and
my
address.
name is Dorit Gelbard. My address is 17712 Tamarack Lane in Grand Haven. So I wonder, I don't know if you had a chance to read my email, if you don't mind me reading it.
That
to
would
you.
be fine.
Oh, sure. So I'm the owner of the fresh Mediterranean food truck called Pita on the Pier that was granted a permit last year, 2022, to operate from Chinook Pier. I spoke to the committee a few weeks ago, to the council a few weeks ago, asking if our unique food entity can get a different location in Grand Haven. With the advice of city officials, we tried to looking for state, city, or private alternative locations, but with no luck. We did, however, manage to line up numerous events in the area for a day here and there, but we still need a more permanent location. I'm here today to ask if you will allow our truck to another permanent summer location on Chinook Pier. You already spent the money for the trailer hookup, so we were wondering if one more summer will be allowed. In recent weeks, we learned that even though Chinook Pier was not an ideal location, it is still a better alternative, and we are in a learning process and gaining experience as we go. We are learning how to better market ourselves. The outcome of last year was not all the city faults. We as vendors had to be more involved in marketing ourselves in our new location. We should not have expected to dump all the load of responsibility and marketing on the city. We had to be grateful to the city of Grand Haven for giving us this opportunity. I know last year was not a good experience, but we hope that you will give us a second chance and grant this opportunity again. We will look forward to serve the community again with our unique food alternative. So I was just wondering if the mayor or two members of the council will put it on the agenda for the next meeting for consideration.
I think we probably are going to want to talk to the city manager about that.
To Ashley?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it would be up to her?
Any of us. Ashley can put it on the agenda.
Oh, Ashley can put it on there?
Ashley can.
Oh, okay, sure.
I can, or any two members can.
Sure.
So I think that this is a management issue that probably would be best handled at Ashley's level.
Yeah.
And I think probably you and she should talk.
Okay, would it be better to communicate through email or phone calls, or what would you prefer?
If you, tomorrow, contact our office, we can set up a time.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Okay.
And thank you for
Thank you.
listening.
Yeah.
Mike Weaver, 637 Lake. Two just notes here. One on your approval. It was never stated that it was approved, but the lease to the diesel plant, it was a 3-4 vote. I think, and you better check, I think you need 4 out of 5. So double check that, because we've seen that before with a...
This is for the parking,
museum.
Mike?
Yeah, the
Tonight?
museum, we had that. We had to have 4 out of 5.
Right.
I think
So
that's
double check that.
I think that question was asked, right?
We asked that question.
We asked that
Yeah,
question.
okay, I'm just
She said
I'm
that
mentioning
was-
it because it's...
Or anything on that order.
What's
like,
that?
There was no sale of property. It was just on the parking spaces were okay.
No, it wasn't a sale on Chinook Pier, or not Chinook, the museum property there. It was just a lease. I'm just asking you to double check it. And the other was, as a long-term resident, take a look across from Snug Harbor. I believe we own that dune area over there. You're going to see a lot of exposed timbers. That was where the town originally started. There used to be cabin shacks over there as late as the 40s and 50s. If you go on GIS, Ottawa County GIS, you're going to see that that is eroded quite substantially in just the last 5 years. From what I can tell, it's gone really far these last few years. So we may want to look, one, at why it's
erosion,
eroding.
Mike?
Yeah, it's substantial. Okay. One, why it's eroding. And two, if they're pumping sand, they can usually move that pretty far. They might be able to rebuild that. But at the way that's disappearing, I've never seen it before. I've been here 60 years and boated a good chunk, 50 of them, and I've never seen that type of erosion. I'm not sure if it's because we put in a lot of riprap over there and it's caused a problem, but if you click on that, you'll see a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, people.